News is defined as an event that is unusual or shocking. Sadly, the latest school shootings do not fit that category. These are events that are happening now with all too frequency.
A 14-year-old Massachusetts high school student charged with killing a teacher has been ordered held without bail. Philip Chisholm remained silent during his appearance in adult court on Wednesday. Chisholm has been accused of murdering 24-year-old Colleen Ritzer, a math teacher at Danvers High School.
We have no reason to believe there are any other suspects involved. The juvenile suspect is expected to be arraigned today in Salem Juvenile Court for the charge of murder.
The defense attorney argued for the proceedings to be closed and her client to be allowed to stay hidden because of his age. The judge denied the request. Prosecutors allege the teen, who was a transfer student to the school, stabbed Ritzer and then dumped her body in the woods behind the campus.
The body of Colleen Ritzer, 24, of Andover, was located in the woods near Danvers High School. It was apparent that she is a homicide victim. She was a teacher here at Danvers High School. This is a terrible tragedy of Colleen Ritzer and the entire Danvers community.
Police discovered Ritzer's blood in a second-floor bathroom Tuesday night before her body was found behind the school. Chisholm was spotted walking along a road early Wednesday after he was reported missing a day earlier. He is due back in court on November 22nd.
So what must we do to stop the violence? And more importantly, why are these shootings happening so much? Joining us now for this segment again is Dee Dee Behnke, a former aide to President George W. Bush. The nation's preeminent political psychologist, Dr. Bart Rossi, joins us as well, and political and communications professor Jackie Guster. Thank you so much for joining us. It seems like it happens almost on a weekly basis, and if it wasn't so sad, it would be funny that it happens so frequently. How do we stop this violence from happening? Is it a gun control issue? Is it a discipline issue? Is it just a reflection of our society? And we're seeing some video now from Sandy Hook, the Newtown shootings that happened not too long ago. And we thought that would be the touchstone where everything would stop and we'd fix this, but apparently we're in the same place and it's happening again and again.
Well, I actually think this case is a case to argue against gun control, because this teacher was killed. Yeah, this teacher was killed with a box cutter, not a gun. So I'm just saying that I think it's a good idea now for us really to think about, you know, better security in schools. There's security in almost any building you walk into. Your security on MTA. I mean, why not have security guards at schools?
Before we move on, you're talking about an armed guard or police officer in every single school in America.
Well, you know, yeah, actually, I think that'd be a good idea.
Okay.
I feel a little differently. I think security might be a good idea, but I've changed my whole approach on guns in America. I do a lot of segments, as you know, Frank, on guns in America. I think we should stop talking about the guns, actually. We should talk about mental health, because we know the makeup of the shooter. It doesn't matter how old they are. They have retained anger that generates into rage. They want to strike out at society. They feel like they're on the outside looking in, whether it's a peer group or whether it's regular society. So we know what's going on, so we need to focus on mental health. Even the NRA says mental health. Republicans, the GOP says mental health. Democrats, obviously in favor of mental health, but we don't do it. So I think we should change the whole conversation and go down the road of discussing and dealing with mental health. Here's what I say. In middle school and high school, we should have a program that mandates parents and kids go for training in mental health. What can a psychologist do? Middle school and high school. In a generation, maybe we'll change this.
Well,
whole
you're talking long range now.
Yeah.
In a generation, there could be another 1,500 shootings in school.
We need to start. It's
start.
mutually exclusive. I mean, you talk about mental health. I think that's a bipartisan issue. The Republicans, Democrats, and Independents should all agree with. I mean, there's not enough focus or money for mental illness. However, it doesn't mean you get rid of the guns.
They're not mutually exclusive. I agree.
Well, on the political scene, how do you get somebody, I mean, right after Newtown, everybody seemed to be on board, at least Americans did. And then it went to Congress and it went into the morass of the House and Senate and nothing happened. Here we are after all this time. I think it was December 14th, I think, of a year and a half ago or so. And nothing happened.
Right.
So how do we get the politics of this to catch up with what people want?
I don't think it's so much of the politics. I mean, after every shooting, after every mass killing in a school, everybody gets on the track of gun control, gun control. You can see the polls, and then everything drops out.
Right.
It becomes a lesser issue. Now, here's the thing, is that I strongly believe in gun control. There is no reason these kids should be able to go to their parents' home, go to an unlocked or a locked cabinet and get a gun.
Right.
They should not have access. But number two, the idea of mental health, if you look at these specific incidences, Adam Lanza, who was the shooter at Newtown,
Yes.
and also a student at the university where I work,
Mm-hmm.
he was under a lot of counseling. That kid, his mother was really taking care of him. She was going to move to a school in Washington to take care of his condition. That child was nitpicked apart and taken care of. Now, he was somebody that had a lot of mental health counseling and help. On the other hand, you have this young man, the 14-year-old that just knifed the math teacher
Yes.
in Massachusetts. He was one of those kids where it was just bubbling below the surface. Now, how do you tell? Do you go into long-term counseling with a kid like that? That's kind of difficult. Something like gun control is a yes or a no. Something like mental health.
So you're saying gun control issue, that's easier to
that's
resolve
easier.
right now.
I can take away a gun.
And then work on the mental health
But
issue.
mental health, Dr. Rossi, you know, you can have a patient for 20 years, and then 20 years later you get them to say, well, was it me?
But Jackie, the point is, if you can tackle mental health over a generation, it will have a profound impact. We're not even scratching the surface. So we need to decide how we're going to do. What are we going to do with the profile of these shooters? We know what they're all about. We know their rage, their anger, their hostility. We know about them, so let's deal with it.
The young
it's not going to solve all the problems.
But the young man in Massachusetts, he was known as a quiet guy. That's what we know. Nobody knew that he was full of rage. They just knew that he was out of the inner circle.
But with more awareness of what psychologists can do, we can help more and more and more people. Are we going to solve all the problems? No, nothing solves all the
Also, it
problems.
might inform the parents of what to look for, but you make a very good point. I'd like to make a point as well. When I was growing up, we had institutions in which kids and adults could be sent to for long-term psychiatric care and, for lack of a better description, taken out of the mainstream of the public and actually dealt with one-on-one. And then there was this move in the 70s and 80s to get rid of these institutions. And here we have some of these people who are a bit mentally unstable out there, who think they hear voices or think somebody's talking to them through the other room and so on, and they act out in violence. Maybe we should bring back, and I'll ask you, Dr. Rossi, these institutions in which we can house these folks and take care of them on a regular basis so they are out of the mainstream of the public.
Well, we need more of that, definitely, because there are two types of shooters, really, if we're going to get into this. There's those who have serious personality problems. That's one issue. And then there's the others who, as you just mentioned, they have schizophrenic features. They're psychotic.
Ongoing problems.
Like the Navy shooter, the Navy, okay? This guy's hearing voices. So we have two different types, but it's similar in the context of serious mental illness. One just happens to be a more psychotic nature. So you're right, maybe we need more institutions, we need a more step-up type of programming, but we need it for all levels.
But why can't we set up an apparatus where a person is evaluated, found out where he or she stands with regard to their mental health, if they exhibit, and then put them in an institution so they can be dealt with on a regular basis, as opposed to saying go home.
But it doesn't solve most of the shooting.
Well, it keeps them off.
Most of the shooters have personality problems that have been there. They've been there for a long time, and we need
but
parents.
But then a family member would step up and say, "Hey, my son or my sister or my brother is really maybe somebody should take care of this
What about
person."
something more preliminary, like testing in schools for mental health issues? I mean, you have testing SATs. Why not? Where it's not invasive necessarily, but there could be some red flags that if there's the money there and money put forth for mental illness in schools, then that could prevent a lot of problems.
That would be fought like crazy from the parents. No parent wants a label.
I don't think so. Do you think the parents want the kids with box cutters and shooting and and violent?
They don't see that their kid is going to do something like that.
Testing. Look, this is more Dr. Rossi's area, but I'm thinking there could be something like that where it's not invasive and everyone could agree. I mean, that would take some brainstorming.
I love the idea that you two are looking for some kind of solution along the mental health avenue. However, the things that you're bringing up, I just know as a practical basis, as somebody who's been in the classroom for the last 20 years, that you're going to get a lot of flack from the adults.
asking questions, for having,
I don't think
counselors?
so. I'll tell you
either.
why I don't think so, Jackie. I think that what you can do with mental health is present it in a different way. You can present it in what psychologists can do. For example, every professional golfer has their own personal psychologist. How could that be? And yet we're afraid to take our kids to a psychologist? So we could change this around in the schools, and we could say, hey, listen, here's how we can help your kid, even if he doesn't exhibit any serious mental health problem, but how can he become a better student? How can he be more in tune with success? And how can he be somebody striving for real success?
So
that's what we can do.
Package it differently.
Yes. I like that idea.
Absolutely
Friendly evaluation.
All right, let's talk about the political will to do this. Here we are, 4 of us discussing this, and we've come up with 2 or 3 really good ideas. Why politically can't we move the ball down the road and say, okay, hey, we have a comprehensive plan here. Where is the congressperson? Where is the senator? Where is the president stepping forward and saying this is a comprehensive plan that we need to get passed? Why can't this get done?
Because we're getting too wrapped up with guns. And I've given many presentations on guns in America, all kinds of segments on that. And I'm actually changing my tune here. I'm really thinking that we should go down a different road, because there's one thing everyone agrees on, and that's even the NRA, mental health. So let's start someplace.
So you're saying the gun issue is wrapped around this, and we can't get through that protective cover.
Not going to get past.
As soon as we bring it up, we have the gun NRA and other groups saying this can't be done. Why isn't there a politician out there who's trying to separate this, saying, hey, listen, I agree with this. We're going to take care of this issue, but let's talk about this issue, package it together, make it a comprehensive
bill. They need to come on this show.
Yeah, but now hopefully someone will. I mean, it's a good idea, but I think a lot of people don't understand mental health. But it's getting to be more and more prevalent, because, you know, this happens every time there's a killing. So you're right, it would be great. I think if there was a politician or a bipartisan committee or something to talk about how you put money into mental health and get off the guns, because we're never going to get anywhere with the guns. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I think that it could happen. I think over time something could happen. You're talking about mental health, and you even said that it could take 20 years down the line to get this instituted. I'm in the classroom every day. We have these in-services traditionally in schools and colleges where we are taught how to deal with aggressive students, how to deal with students who are angry with us, angry with the other students. This is a problem right now. If we're going to just say forget the guns, that politically it's not going to happen, you're going to have a lot of shootings from now until 20 years later.
No, we're talking about focusing on mental health instead of the guns.
Right, but you're saying it's a long-term
No, not long-term.
It will be long-term to change the whole spectrum of this around.
That's right, and you need to.
But we can start right now,
short-term
today.
And long-term.
Short-term, where we can have a program. Let's say the government decides, let's just let it throw out at government. We can do this next year.
No, I'm totally with you there.
Every classroom is going to have a situation set up where parent has to come in and be trained on what psychologists can do. They don't know about cognitive behavioral.
Well, I hope you get to work on this real soon, because I think that's a good idea. But I don't want those guns in the pockets of my students when they're angry at me because they didn't get a good grade.
Well, then we need armed guards.
Does it worry you? You're in the classroom.
Yes, it worries me. We make jokes about it.
Do you ever worry about somebody coming in?
Of course. We have security buttons where we can go over and lock the doors and call security, etc. Sure, I make jokes about it. Like I said before, Adam Lanza was a student in my classroom. We made jokes about it. Well, you know, was he in your class? That kind of thing, sure.
Well, you've been teaching for a while, I assume.
A while.
Did you ever think we'd get to this point where there'd be buttons to lock the doors and you'd be afraid of your students?
I've always noticed that there has been an anger problem with some students. I've noticed that any kind of authority over some students creates a problem. But I never thought we'd get to the point where they'd be calling for armed guards in elementary schools.
Let's talk about this generation. A lot of people complain, and I don't know how much time we have. We'll see how much we could fit in here. But this sense of entitlement sometimes in these students, that, you know, they're so pressured to get an A, and they're told they're special when they're young, and when they get a C, there's anger. Do you think it's also the way the generation was raised, where you have these kids who think they are always supposed to do well because their mom and dad tell them they're special?
Absolutely. Dr. Jean Twenge of University of California, San Diego, has written a book called The Narcissistic Generation, the Me Generation.
Right.
Yeah. It's terrible. These kids think they really have to achieve. I had a student who got a B instead of an A. He called me up angrily and said, "You're supposed to help me achieve my goals." You know, he could not conceive of getting a B.
Well, you know, I think this is a good point. It's a good discussion. I agree with what you're saying. However, I think the shooters have a little bit different personality.
Oh.
They are so far into the extreme with personality problems that have been there for a long time. All of these shooters, even the 12-year-old. So this is a long-standing mental health issue that exists within these folks, and we need to tackle that.
But the
That's what we
extreme
need to do.
cases like that, don't you think if you had a counselor like yourself talking to the students in the class, you could probably pick that up. So
Okay.
that's why if you had a
could pick
counselor in every
We
class,
have
it
run out
worked.
of time, but the good news is you're going to be back in a moment because we have the famous lightning round coming up, where we're going to throw some stories of events of the week, and you're going to comment on that. So, fresh outlook, lightning round, questions and answers coming up next from our panel. We'll be right back.